Good morning. I have a little bit of a, let's see, is it a keyboard? Or we just click into this? There we go. A little bit of a mixed bag this morning of things going over. And I'm going to spend probably most of the time on a tool that probably a lot of you maybe aren't too familiar with at all, called Google Webmaster Tools. How many have heard of that tool, by the way? Okay, and now, second time, how many are using it now? So there are of you guys who have signed up to it. Oh, okay, more familiar than I thought. Well, maybe some of this will be familiar to you already. For the rest of you, I think you'll find it interesting, and maybe there's some stuff that you who have maybe used Google Webmaster Tools a little bit haven't considered. I think there's some thoughts that we'll bring this morning that will cause you to think a little bit more about what Webmaster's tool is doing compared to what Google Analytics is doing, and where there's a gap that you have to look at both. So with that said, we'll go ahead and get into the presentation part of it. Google Webmaster's tools, for those who haven't used it in particular, it's basically Google.com's view of your website and what it's like for them to interact with your website. It identifies crawling issues. It gives you tools that you are able to get in if you have something that needs to be indexed and you want it indexed quicker, sooner rather than later, because Google will eventually get to it. You have some options to be able to, I'll put it this way, inspire them to come and crawl it quicker. It doesn't give you a guarantee of a immediate response. But then there's also times when there's the oops, you got something out there that shouldn't be in Google's index, and you have the ability to submit a request to remove it. Personally, I had this happen to me a couple of years ago, and it worked very, very fast when I used that tool. It gives you insights into how people are reaching your website, that search engine optimization view of what's happening on search. You want me to put that on?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
If you'd like.
Okay, sure.
I'll help you, Gary.
Here we go. I'm going to put it on the side. Maybe that'll help everybody hear me a little bit better. Okay. But it'll give you insights into how people are arriving at your site. And then there's other things where you can actually enhance your search results. And Google will offer tools, does offer tools in that area. So here's an example of one of the views that you can have through Google Webmaster Tools. And again, I'm going to ask you to be doing a little bit of thinking here as we're going through it, because I'm going to ask some questions. We thought we'd have a little maybe reward if someone could answer a certain question right, but as I looked at it, it wasn't good enough to really make it worth it to you. So we'll just make this discussional here. But you're seeing here search queries that are going against your site from Google.com. Now, the number on the side there where it says queries, 5,000 there, this, by the way, is looking at the CIO website. Just took these stats, I believe, yesterday or the day before from there, so it's very recent. And that queries number is not actually the number of queries, it's the number of unique queries. And what you're seeing on the right-hand side, the clicks, impressions is basically how many times your content came up and was viewable on a Google.com search web results, potentially there. But it wasn't necessarily clicked. The clicks tells you how many times they click it. So that click should be a number that tells you and is reflected in your analytics, right, when they come to your site. But in this case, the number of clicks that it shows here of 13,000 on Google Analytics for the CIO website, it's only 8,400. And so the question is, why are those two figures different? We're going to get you thinking about this. Notice here the highest query here is the incident response plan. I wonder if they really know that, or how would you know that any other way except through Google Webmaster Tools that people are querying for that. So there's a second tab out here called for top pages, and it tells you another view of the same results, but just top pages. So we'll look at that now. And you'll notice the numbers are basically the same here, except for it's telling you basically the total unique pages that have been viewed through Google. And this is over a month's period right here you're looking at, a 30-day period. And you'll notice in this, down here at the bottom, remember the big query, the biggest and highest query was incident response. it's showing the incident response plan example .doc is the highest document that everybody's looking for on the CIO's website. Now, here's the interesting thing. I went over to analytics and I looked up on there to see if I could see what the number says over there, and it's a very low response document in Google Analytics. It only shows it at maybe 100 views. But here it's showing a figure by these clicks right here that you're seeing down here of 20 times that volume. And you wouldn't know it unless you looked at Google Webmaster Tools. So it's you get a lot of good information out of there. By the way, there's all kinds of ways to filter this result. I can filter it by what the view would be like compared to a desktop or compared to on a mobile device, or how it's all working there. And you can do that throughout various views that you have, because all I'm giving you right now is just one of the views through Google Webmaster Tools. But in looking at this, and I'm looking at the results that it's showing down here, I'm seeing this document here, right? That's a Word doc, right, that's coming through. And this is a web page. It's the home page. Here's another document. Here's another web page. So I'm seeing both web pages and documents that are coming up in Google search results, and Google is taking them to our site content directly from Google. So I got a question for you to think about, and I kind of was hoping to, let's see, we got a nice page down, yes. Got a question for you. I want you to think about it. Are the pages identified as clicked on in the Google Webmaster Tools included in the page view reports on Google Analytics? Sorry, I'm making you think so early in the morning. There's a hint here. Google Analytics, the way it works is it's embedded within your website in the header. It's a piece of JavaScript code, right? And it executes whenever those pages come up. So a hint here is that's the only way the analytics happens on your website. Who knows the answer to this? It's one of those, I'll give you another hint, depends question. Anybody have an idea or a thought as to what the answer is here? Are the pages identified as clicked on Webmaster Tools included in the page view reports on your Google Analytics? And someone's shaking their head. Why? Nobody wants to even get it. Pardon me?
The numbers don't support it.
The numbers don't support it, but why? Why don't they support it?
Is that code not executed if people come in and out quickly?
No. Remember, the Google Analytics code is a JavaScript code on a web page. Let's go back up.
The document, it won't register the number.
There you go. So I have here this incident response plan .doc, right? And it's got the most volume that's bringing it to my site there with 2,000 clicks. None of that is registering in Google Analytics. None of that at all. And so there's no way I would know that unless I'm using Google Webmaster Tools. Here's a picture to give you an idea of how this works. The green arrows are depicting what gets captured in Google Analytics. The red arrows is showing what does not. And some of it depends on whether you're using our new Google Analytics code or the old Google Analytics code. We talked about this last meeting, that we had a new version of the code that basically gave you the ability to track more than just the fact that a web page came up on your site or on the client's browser, but also if they clicked on a link that goes to a document, it will track that event. So the reason why I knew that 100 documents at least on that one document about the incident response plan through Google Analytics was because people went to the website here, and we have the new Google Analytics code on the CIO's website, so when they clicked on it, it registered. But it left out 20 times that amount because people went to google.com and they found basically a document or a PDF document, whatever, and when they clicked it on there and it brought them directly to your site, no registration of that was in Google Analytics. You will only know that through Google Webmaster Tools. Another reason to want to have Google Webmaster Tools, so they can use and understand that traffic, a huge portion of traffic not even recognized going on, and so therefore maybe some decisions would be made different. Okay, right now everybody's interested in the incident response plan. Maybe I should recognizing that Webmaster Tools make a link for something much more available on my website. This is what analytics and tracking the numbers and things of that nature are about, is about making decisions and changing what you do on your website based on understanding what people are doing and why. So before I move off of this, does this make sense to everybody? Because is anybody not sure what I'm talking about here? Is that clear? Your documents, your PDFs, and a lot of you have a lot of information in that style on your website that a lot of this is coming directly from Google.com. By the way, on the CIO website, not much different than any others. The largest referrer to the CIO website is Google.com. And some people on your website, the largest traffic overall comes directly from Google.com. People don't come directly to your site. And so that being the case, and you've got lots of documents, there's a lot of traffic that you don't know anything about unless you're using Google Webmaster Tools. And if you didn't notice, let's go back up to it. In here, you have the ability to download this table of information so you can get the information out of this tool and bring it into something else if you want to bring it together, bring the full figures together, and be able to filter on the docs and the PDFs and things of that nature out of a spreadsheet or whatever.
I was tracking up about what's your favorite.
Any questions?
Well, yeah.
There's lots of other information that we can get out of Webmaster Tools. And so maybe what we'll do is go ahead and take a little demo of some of those features for you. This is that same site, the CIO website. And there's all kinds of options that are in here that you're able to go through. And for the sake of time, matter of fact, I want to see if I can make sure I keep track of time here. We won't keep it too long on there. But this is the one we were looking at, search queries before. But in addition, under search traffic, you're able to see links to your site. Do you ever wonder who's linking to you? The CIO website has lots of links coming in, an enormous amount. Matter of fact, I was surprised at how many. You'll notice I would have never known anything about these ones here as far as links coming in. Data.gov, that's the U.S. federal government, bringing in a lot from data.gov. I would have never expected that. But huge volumes coming into there. Your most linked to content, this is Office of Professional Development, that they're mostly linking on, external coming to the site. Like I said, this is stuff you wouldn't know any other way unless you got into this tool. How your data is linked. This one doesn't really give you any numbers, but it's kind of interesting. It's telling me the wording that they're using to link to the site and to come in. You're also able to see various other information. Google Index. Let's take a look at that. You can see through this a status of how indexing is working, and there's not really, in that sense, a whole bunch of interest, at least that I wouldn't think from a business perspective, but content keywords. This is telling you across all your content of the site, what is the most significant keywords that are being used on your website that Google is recognizing in your content. And so you can see the largest one here that's coming through would make sense to be project on the CIO's website. You can drill into that a little bit further, and it'll start showing you, matter of fact, a lot of the type of content where it's located and the number of occurrences on your site. Here's a nice feature to be able to have and use when a time comes that something is out there. It maybe got published accidentally, it got indexed, and you realize you got to get it off the site, but yet people are still looking and finding it in the Google search results. You can submit a URL request to Google to have them remove content from your site. And I think the amount of days that they said here are, I can't remember. Dave Goebel, do you remember how long? Typically, a couple days. And that's kind of Google's, how can you say it? Publicly what they say they will do it by. A couple years ago, I had an occurrence where I had to do it, and within hours it was gone. So it was pretty quick in my one experience of using it. Under crawling, this is an interesting one. Understanding how they're crawling your site. Now this one, actually the CIO's website is crawled pretty well, but you're going to see a figure here that might surprise you at first. But we're going to drill into it and find out what it's telling us. So here it's showing us via a desktop view that it had, 7 of them that were a little bit of a problem. But then it has this huge figure of 875 not found. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean not found because it's URL errors, because it crawled it and it found a broken link on our site? No, it doesn't mean that. It does not mean that you have an internal link broken. What it means is you actually have an external link broken. So what happens is, as we all do, we have content that eventually we remove from our site for one reason or another, but if that's been referred to other people, it's still out there on the web. And the way I know this is I drill down into this one, for example. It gives me the error, and if I want to see where it's linked from, and I start realizing it's coming from a whole bunch of external sites that are linking into there. Just an interesting view you would never know unless you looked at Google. But Google's view, of course, is the whole world view of your site within that context. So that's what you're getting as you look into there. All right. Fetch as Google. There are times when you want to basically just see how well Google is fetching something, and you can do a simulation of that. But after you put something into here to be able to see whether it's getting fetched, you can further put a request out to Google to re-crawl it. And if you just recently published it, Google will up the priority to crawl that type of content and bring it into your site. Now, I think they still give quite a long number of days, potentially they might do it, but you are putting it in a higher priority than if you just leave it there and wait until the crawlers come around. You do put it at the top of the list. Google basically is going to be variable depending on how much content is out there and how much is being published and whatever across the whole web. So you're basically dealing with a huge machine, if you will, with a queue that it's working through, as it would. Any questions on any of that? Also, it'll tell you if there's any security issues. No issues on CIO's website. But if you have some kind of issue where they've detected some kind of hacking or whatever that may have occurred, inappropriate content on your site, they will put messages in there to that effect and let you know. Matter of fact, if you look at these messages here that are out there, I have one here that dates back to over a year ago when apparently there was some potential downtime with our site back in July of 2013. So there's all kinds of different things that they're doing, and they're looking and they're tracking on your site for you. All right, so let's get back to our presentation. What's the most important thing that we need to remember about this? Register your site for Google Webmaster Tools. There's about 5 actually different ways. When I tried to register this one particular just example site I put out here, it recommended to me to use the HTML file. Basically what that is once you've got to first have a Google account. Everybody should have a Google account anyways, because to be able to view Google Analytics, to be able to view anything about Google Webmaster Tools, to be able to get in and do any management with your Google site search, you got to have a Google account. And as always, we recommend that people not use their personal Google accounts, but they have some kind of Google Webmaster account, so to speak, that they have for the department they've established there. You can even tie it to a general Webmaster email if you wanted to do that. For example, if you have a webmaster at, for example, cio.city.gov, you can take that email address and establish a Google account with that so that all emails and notifications related to that particular Google account will come through to them, And in addition, you can log on with that email address, so you don't have to learn another one. But you can establish a Google email address too if you want a Gmail one. But then they want to basically, you have to verify that you actually own your site to be able to have access to the Google Webmaster Tools. It's a free tool, but we can't do this for you. You're going to have to do this for yourself here. Some of these other things, we can set up your analytics for you, of course, your site search, but this one you're going to need to do, and we're recommending you do this because we'd like to be able to get more into this tool later on in a workshop. And before we would do that, you're going to have be on the tool and have it up and available for yourself. So one of the ways is embedding this little file that Google will give you to put it onto the root site of your site. It's just a little file that only they will see, and they'll recognize, okay, you own this because you got this file from us through my logon on Google. Therefore, you can do that. There's other ways to do it, an HTML tag. You can actually, there's a way to do it through Google Analytics, and you may need to contact us to help you with that. And there's other ways, too, that I'm not even necessarily as familiar with. But it's very easy to establish, and we recommend that you do. Okay, on to another subject. Upcoming Google Analytics changes. I told you there's a mixed bag of things. There is a capability Google recently released for Google Analytics that allows us to filter out crawling or bot traffic that's coming to your site. So basically, that type of traffic has in the past been inflating the analytics on your site. What we're going to be planning on doing come effective January 1st is we're going to go through and we're going to turn on that feature for all your Google Analytics accounts. And we're letting you know so you can let people who are your stakeholders or are interested in the analytics, they may see a little drop in the figures because we're cutting out that bot traffic. Does that make sense?
Can you do me a favor?
It's just a filter capability that just came out recently.
Yeah.
Also, another thing that's going to be coming down the line, and we don't really have a set date for it yet because Google really hasn't set a hard date for it, and that is Google Universal Analytics. It is where everyone's going to have to do an upgrade to. I understand it'll have a little bit of change, not a whole lot, to your dashboard views. It'll have probably some additional features that will be added to there. It won't take right away, but eventually we will have a new set of Google embed code for that we will be releasing. So we're just letting you know about that ahead of time. Actually, I think there was one department told us that they were interested in potentially upgrading their dashboard to the Google Universal Analytics. And so we actually can do that for your site. Upgrade it to there if you have reasons to want to do it. Universal Analytics gets into some additional features that give you greater tracking relating to mobile activity and relating to the Internet of Things. And we'll be getting more into this later on, talking about it, but you're essentially able to track anything that can be connected on the web.
Thank you.
And you want to track some kind of event activity, no matter what it is. If it's basically connected to the web and it's running via software, it's just tracking some event. It could be cars going by on the freeway, you know, and you got something tracking that. You actually can capture that and send it to Google Analytics and create a dashboard for that type of activity.
Does it have equipment and disposal date?
Upcoming, we have a seminar we want to do on web performance management. And as I mentioned already, workshops relating to search engine optimization using Google Webmaster Tools and site search. We want to do both of these in the future. The one on web performance management would be first, and we're shooting for doing this in early December. And it's looking like, my gut feel is going to be the second week of December because the first week is following Thanksgiving. And everybody's just getting off vacation, and they're going through all their emails and trying to get caught up with everything, and we want to put people into bind. So I'm thinking maybe the second week in December, probably on a Wednesday, and here, that we would hold the seminar on web performance management. This is one that, in particular, for the first hour, we would highly recommend that you invite your key executives that have an interest in the performance of your web and your web performance and your properties that are on the web. your CIOs, your PIOs, or other business execs that have an interest there. Because really, if you're going to embrace analytics of any kind for a web strategy where you are actually, you're doing it for a reason, right? You just don't want interesting figures you can just show people, but you're wanting to say, okay, based on this information I now have, I'm going to make different decisions about what I'm doing on the web. It's telling me, it's informing me. And that's what this seminar is about. It's about a web performance strategy, and if you don't embrace executives that have some kind of decision-making capability relating to your content and what you're doing on your website, there's no point in it. Google Analytics is just a tool, but if nobody cares, there's no sense in doing anything with it. So this first hour is going to focus on that business strategy, and we'll also be doing this via webinar, but we just want to strongly recommend that you encourage your PIOs, CIOs, execs to especially take an interest in this first hour. We will be talking about performance management and how to grow the capability, a strategy for basically where do I start and what do I need to do to be able to become more mature in this area where I'm not just looking at neat reports, but I'm tracking things over time and I'm noticing differences there, and it's causing me to make different changes in my content or the organization of my site or what I'm highlighting because of what I'm learning through this strategy. And in addition, it allows me to start setting some goals or some key performance indicators of what would I like to accomplish, what would I like to increase, and what would I like to track to see whether I'm meeting those goals and objectives. And then to take it a step further, when we start getting more sophisticated in our decision-making and our business decisions relating to this, I want to start knowing and understanding what the difference is between my physical channels and my web channels and my mobile channel. And what's the impact when traffic changes from here to here, or what's the impact when people drop off from my mobile or my web channel on my field office channel? These are important decisions to be able to understand the impact of these across all those. And that's just what this is about. It's about the business strategy relating to your performance, really of your business, because we all know everything's connected to the web somehow. So with that said, recently we had a very interesting meeting with some of the larger departments that are using Google Analytics in the state. And we found some had more sophistication than others, perhaps, in terms of what they were doing it from a business standpoint. And in particular, Franchise Tax Board seems to be kind of a lot farther than most state departments. I don't know of any other state department that's as far along as they are in the sense of implementing a web performance strategy. They actually have implemented a governance, a regular review, and all kinds of other things, looking at also their usability of their website, their content. They've been doing a number of different things for a number of years now, and in maturing in the way that they have done their performance strategy. And so what we've asked them to do is do a presentation of that, of a case study that basically tells the story. Because for all of us, we're mostly starting at the ground level for the most part. And this one is going to be telling the story of how they started out, the first steps they took, maybe difficulties they ran into, things they needed to do to engage people, to get them to understand what was going on, and what were the steps that have gone on, where they are today, and where they're planning on going in the future. I think you'll find it very, very valuable information. Because this isn't a private enterprise, this is another governmental agency, just like you. And they're finding that it's important that they pay attention to what happens with their web performance. The second hour, you can tell them if they can stick around if they want, but if they want to leave, they can go ahead. We're going to focus more on in-depth things related to Google Analytics and what you can do with it. So obviously, you'll want to be there the first hour and especially the second hour if you are into that area. And we'll be talking more in detail of things, the reporting capabilities that you can do. And we'll also be talking and giving you a demo. Hopefully, well, the plan is to give a demo of customer feedback via online surveys, because one of the ways that you get performance isn't just a Google Analytics thing. As we said, there's Google Webmaster Tools involved. It's search engine optimization, but it's also being able to ask your customers once they've completed an online transaction, what was your experience like? Good, bad, or ugly? Or if they are on your transaction page and they're leaving it, wouldn't it be good to capture, what's going on here? Why are you leaving and not completing the transaction? It'd be nice to be able to do that and find out how we can improve our online channels. finally, we haven't planned the exact dates for this yet, but we want to do a workshop in the future. It would not be a meeting like this. It would be a series of smaller workshops in one of our training classrooms, because what we'd like to do, and we've done a little bit this years ago in the past relating to other technologies on the web, is basically have a sit-down session where people can log into their Google account, look at their webmaster tools, and we can walk through and learn about how to use that in a more effective way and the different things we can do. Essentially, it's a training workshop, and it would be free, and we're going to probably plan it after the new year, a time in there, and we'd probably just schedule whatever we needed of a day in one of our training rooms, and we'd have probably just 1 hour sessions, and you'd all just sign up for whichever one you come to. And you'd be able to come, and we'd be able to work through it together, and we'd probably all learn something together at the same time. But it's a kind of roll up your sleeves workshop with your particular site, and what does this tool and what does this information mean in your site. Okay. How are we doing time-wise? I don't know. Okay. All right. Is there any questions? Because I'm basically done. I didn't have anything else to bring. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, Richard, when you were talking about the filter that you were developing, that you were going to put in place that would filter out crawlers on our site within our Google Analytics, we manage our own Google Analytics. So are you going to provide some guidance for creating that filter for that?
Yeah, well, actually, it's not a filter in the sense that,
it's not a view filter.
It's not like what you have to do on the account. I'm glad you're asking that question. It's a good question. Because there is a way on your profile to do filtering of almost anything that you want to filter on. But this is not that type of filter. It's actually a checkbox. Okay. It's just a checkbox. So I'll send us an email to our CIO info, and maybe what we'll do for those is we'll put a little post out on Web Tools that tells about where it is and where you can go and whenever if you want to do it yourself. We thought we would do it at the end of the year just to make a clean cut for people so that they can say, starting this year, you won't see that anymore, and so it makes sense to other people. It'd be a little bit easier to know. Okay. Was there other questions? Yes.
One issue I had when creating a new Gmail address for a blog we started was Google helpfully created a Google Plus account for us. And we started getting likes and things like that in the Google Plus that we didn't want. I had to go in and change the settings of the Gmail account to cut that out.
Oh, okay.
Separate that out. Coming out. I think Google now has changed their policy. No longer that forced integration. Yeah. You want to be aware, if you create a Google account for work, you also want to take a look and make sure that they haven't added any other tools. Yeah, the Google Plus one I think would be the main only one. They were trying to encourage everybody to use their social media. Yeah, good point. Oh, I'm sorry. That was that question was about the point was made about for the people that are on the webinar. The one had asked or had made a statement really that when you set up a Google account that in the past it would automatically also set up a Google Plus account. But I believe that is not the case anymore, but he was just saying you want to make sure that it doesn't do that for you if you don't want it, to disable that. Go in and disable that. The other question we had earlier, if someone wasn't able to catch that, had to do relating to filtering out bots and crawl traffic on your site, that if you had set up your own Google Analytics account, you can do that yourself. And it's a checkbox item, and we're planning on publishing about that item on Web Tools. Yes?
Do you have some control over what gets filtered and what doesn't? Because, I mean, obviously Google's not going to create a tool that prevents Google from crawling your site. But if you want other search engines to be able to crawl your site as well, you don't want to prevent that.
It doesn't have anything to do with preventing sites from crawling your site. It just has to do with not registering those crawls to your site as traffic to your site. So it doesn't keep anybody from crawling your site. Yeah. It's just to get rid, what they want to do is they want analytics to focus on real people coming to your site, not programs. He was asking, I'm sorry, for those who aren't here, he was asking about turning off that bot traffic, turning on that bot traffic filter. Would it keep anybody from crawling your website? It doesn't have anything to do with that. It just has to do with registering that traffic in your Google Analytics dashboard. Any other questions? Good questions. Probably a lot of other people had the same question. Okay. All right, I'm done.
Cool, thank you, Richard.